All right, guys, it's time to talk about the Utah Jazz, the #1 seed last season. Will they be the #1 seed this year? Did the moves they made make them better? Do they get them over the hump in the playoffs? Let's talk about it. It's the Hoops Nerd Show. All right, guys, for this month of August and into September before the season starts, it's coming soon. We're going to do some season previews. Before we get into this, make sure that if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel. And also in the comments, let me know which teams you want me to preview after the Jazz. Obviously, I'm a Jazz fan. I'm going to talk about the Jazz first, but I want to talk about a bunch of teams, but I want to talk about the teams you guys are interested. So in the comment section, let me know. All right, the Utah Jazz had, in my opinion, a successful offseason. They had some moves that were a little bit painful. We talked about it in my last couple of videos a little bit, but we're going to talk a little bit about where I think they will end up and if the moves they made them better and, you know, are they a championship contender or not? So let's just get right into it. Last season, they were the #1 seed in the Western Conference, lost in the second round to the Los Angeles Clippers in kind of a similar style in ways they've lost in years before. It was the Houston Rockets for multiple years, and this year it was the Los Angeles Clippers playing a spread 5-out system that Utah lost to. And this offseason, I feel like the Jazz have attacked some of their weaknesses that, you know, might allow them to actually advance these playoffs. I don't know if they did enough because they're essentially the same thing, the same team with a few extra players that were really nice exchanges for others. So let's just go through the moves they've made this offseason. The big move that started off the offseason, we talked about it before, was Mike Conley. Re-signing Mike Conley was a big deal. You can go see my former videos if you want to get more information on that. But Mike Conley re-signing was a big deal. The interesting free agency signing, the most interesting free agency signing for the Jazz was Rudy Gay. Rudy Gay is still a top-tier player. He is someone that put up really nice defensive numbers for the Spurs. Surprisingly good. He's a player that has played backup center, and he shoots like 38% from three last season, I believe. Let me know in the comments what exactly it is. And just fills a need for the Jazz to have a backup forward that will fill the Georges Niang role. Georges Niang leaves for Philadelphia, that the Jazz needed. An upgrade defensively, a more consistent offensive player, someone who probably is going to have a little bit more, I don't know how you say it, like clout in the end of games, more just like pizzazz. I don't know what you want to say, but the guy can get buckets and he's not going to be afraid at the end of games and he's going to hit shots. And he also defends well. His defensive metrics are actually really, really good. And he played something like 250 plus minutes last season at center for the San Antonio Spurs. So here's a guy that can come in, a legit stud that can come in, back up Rudy Gobert if he needs to, or play next to him at the 4. And that means if he's played backup 5 and done it at a solid level, you have a nice weak side defender to back up Rudy, something that Rudy Gobert has not really had with other players. He's just never been on the floor at the same time with Derek Favors last season. It was always with either Georges Niang or Bojan Bogdanovic. This now adds another solid rotation player that can play with Rudy Gobert or without. That's, to me, one of the big additions and one of the big changes for this team. It's going to come down to Quinn Snyder, though, if he's willing to do these things. Is he willing to go and play a 5-out offense at times? You know? Because one of the Rudy hate that he got for last season was over the top. It wasn't fair. Rudy Gobert was not the reason the Jazz lost, at least defensively, against the Clippers. The issue that the Jazz had with the Clippers was not defensive, because Rudy could go out. I mean, the defensive issues weren't Rudy's fault. It was that other players on the Jazz could not stay in front of their guys, and so Rudy Gobert is constantly trying to guard the three-point line and the basket, and that's just an impossible ask. So for the Utah Jazz to really get over the hump defensively, it's not Rudy Gobert, it's going to be everyone else. The issue with Rudy Gobert was offensively in the playoffs. He could not punish players like Patrick Beverley in the post. So if Rudy Gobert was down low, Terrence Mann was guarding him in the post, and Rudy Gobert was just not really able to punish them. Now, we saw it in the Olympics that Rudy Gobert was doing really well in the inside. And so it makes you wonder, why isn't Rudy Gobert either getting those post touches, or why isn't he able to take advantage of them when he gets them? I think it's a two-part thing. I think it's part Rudy. Obviously, the talent in the NBA is better, is more difficult. You're going to have more coaches with more schemes to stop Rudy Gobert. And, you know, Rudy Gobert in the playoffs is playing a Team USA team. He was posting up against Kevin Durant, not your typical backup center. And so Rudy Gobert isn't always able to dominate backup centers. But the thing that's nice is if opposing teams are playing a center, that's great. Utah wants that. The playoffs is the issue with the Jazz is, can they have Rudy Gobert punish opposing players who are guarding him in the post? And if Rudy Gobert can't do that, then Quinn Snyder needs to adjust at times and put in Rudy Gay. And that's the nice thing, is that Rudy Gay can come in and really dominate. The painful move that the Utah Jazz made this offseason was they had to trade a first-round pick to remove Derek Favors' contract. Derek Favors at times had really good moments last year where he played really well and he was the player that Jazz fans really wanted. And there were probably more times where he looked chronically injured, whether it was the knee or the back or those things that Derek Favors struggles with, you know, to just stay healthy. The guy is a warrior and battles hard. He's a Jazz man forever, but he just can't stay healthy for the Jazz. And so anyways, this Rudy Gay signing will be really nice for Utah. He can either play backup center or backup four. He'll probably play mostly backup four, but the Jazz are going to want to use him in backup five situations, and even situations where he's on the floor with Rudy Gobert guarding the perimeter, switching around. And sometimes, guess what? In the playoffs, there might be times where they just sit Rudy Gobert so that they can punish small ball lineups with Rudy Gay. And that's perfectly fine. The most important thing for the Utah Jazz is to win the playoff game. It doesn't matter who gets the most minutes. What matters in the end is if you win the game. And the Jazz are at a point now where they need to win the game. All right, guys, before we move on, let's take a minute to talk about manscaped.com. It's the space read again. Get ready. Attention listeners across the galaxy, all the way from Australia to Houston. Do we have a pube problem? I can't believe we're reading this again, but that's what we do. If so, our friends at Manscaped have cleared you for takeoff with the 4th generation and brand new Lawnmower 4.0. Kick your pubes to the next planet with the Performance Package 4.0. The orbits in your pants will feel like you're in zero gravity when you use the best tools for the job from the leaders in male grooming. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get your rocket ready for takeoff by going to manscaped.com. That's HoopsNerd20, HoopsNerd20 for 20% off plus free shipping. Guys, it's really nice. You know what else they have? This Manscaped nose trimmer. It's called the Weed Whacker. It cleans the nose hairs really nicely. And when you're getting older like me and you're growing more hair out of here than up here, it's really nice. I dropped it. There's also this cologne you can get. It's really nice. It smells really good. And boxers and briefs and all the things. Go to HoopsNerd. Let's see. Get 20% off plus free shipping by going to manscaped.com/HoopsNerd. /HoopsNerd20. We'll get through this read. That's 20% off plus free shipping by going to manscaped.com/HoopsNerd20 for a clean trinity and beyond. Your Spaceballs will thank you. Guys, it will save you 20 to 30 bucks. Make sure you go and do it. It'll save you money. Believe me, it's worth it, and it helps me out. Do it. All right, guys, let's keep going. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the signing of Hassan Whiteside, which I thought was actually pretty interesting. To me, this is a big change for the Utah Jazz of even last year. This is a team that is willing to go out and get the best player available. It's not always going to be the player that always fits in perfectly or might be the most, you know, best locker room guy or whatever. And I'm not saying that Hassan Whiteside isn't a good locker room guy, but what's interesting to me is that Hassan Whiteside comes in and he's just the best available center. There were things on Twitter that said the Jazz had offered someone else, my guess is maybe Robin Lopez, maybe a center that took like the full MLE somewhere else. So they get Hassan Whiteside, who comes on a minimum contract for the Utah Jazz, and he's a rotation level center. And instead of paying Derek Favors like $10 million, they're paying Hassan Whiteside 1 year, 2.4. That's really nice. And by the way, backup center is a position you don't want to be paying too much money for. If you're paying over 2.4 to 5 million for backup center, you're starting to waste your money. And that's part of why the Jazz had to move on from Derek Favors, not because, we don't want Derek Favors on the team or that he doesn't contribute at times, which he did, but it's just too expensive. And when you've got to re-sign all these players and you're the 5th biggest tax team in the league, you've got to figure out ways to get that down. You can't just spend money that frivolously. Ryan Smith is going to be willing to pay money for this team. He's already proven that. But you're going to be putting that money in the most efficient way possible. That's with Rudy Gobert. That's with Donovan Mitchell. You're looking at signing Rudy Gay. You've got other players on the Jazz. $10 million to Royce O'Neal. The Jazz are giving out good, solid contracts. $17 million, I believe, give or take, for Bojan Bogdanovic. Really solid. The Jazz are just being very, very efficient with their contracts. They are not going to go out and waste money. If you're the big boy, you've got to find ways to make things work and spend as little as you can, and while maximizing your money as well as best you can. And so the Utah Jazz improved around the edges this offseason. It was clear that Utah was not going to make any sort of major moves. There were some rumors about Joe Ingles being traded, but he's still on the team. So the Utah Jazz are basically the same team they were last year, but instead insert Rudy Gay and Hassan Whiteside for Derek Favors and Georges Niang. Pretty solid upgrade there in terms of Rudy Gay, and Hassan Whiteside and Derek Favors in terms of backup bigs, probably 6s, honestly. So the Jazz actually got better talent-wise around the edges a little bit. The other move that I actually thought was pretty nice was Eric Paschall coming. That was the move that had the rumors with Joe Ingles. The Jazz were trying to get Moses Moody, Eric Paschall, and Kevon Looney from the Golden State Warriors. It ended up just being Eric Paschall for, I believe it was like a 2nd-round pick. But anyways, Eric Paschall comes to the Jazz. He actually has improved from year 1 to year 2. He's an interesting prospect that, can develop with the Jazz, can get even better. But probably the biggest thing about Eric Paschall is how close he is with Donovan Mitchell. Those guys are as close of friends as it gets in the NBA. And if not best friends, and who knows, but it's always Eric Paschall and Donovan Mitchell on Donovan Mitchell's Instagram. I'm sure Donovan Mitchell is super happy to have one of his close friends on the team now. And this is just a thing the Jazz are doing to make Donovan Mitchell happy, and it's what they should do. Donovan Mitchell is a superstar, and you want to make him as comfortable and happy and feel like he is, kind of getting what he needs and wants to play on this Jazz team for as long as you want. Because guess what? The Jazz have like a 3-year window right now with Donovan Mitchell. If they can win a lot, if they can make him happy, maybe you can convince him to stay for another 4 years. The thing that the Jazz are going to need to do this upcoming season is find a way to make sure that Donovan Mitchell makes All-NBA or gets one of these major awards so that he can qualify for a Supermax. Because if you can get Donovan Mitchell qualified for a Supermax, it means that you're going to keep him on the team longer, and that's what you want to do. If you can do that, that's a big win for the Utah Jazz. So I like these moves for the Utah Jazz. How good are they going to be? That's the question. I think that question really is up to Quinn Snyder. I think the Utah Jazz have the team and have a chance to be really good, because I don't really see any team out there that became, astronomically better. If the Brooklyn Nets are healthy, are probably the favorites to win it all, and the Milwaukee Bucks we saw are really, really good. But the Milwaukee Bucks got through a Brooklyn Nets team that wasn't completely healthy and barely did it if Kevin Durant's toe isn't on the line. So if the Brooklyn Nets are healthy, I think they're the favorite, but I don't think there's any reason why Utah Jazz fans can't imagine this Utah Jazz team going to the finals against the Nets. But what that's going to take, it's going to take a commitment from Quinn Snyder to start playing some different styles and start playing some different players. For some reason, last year in the playoffs, Georges Niang was playing major minutes no matter what. We saw in that last game, the Jazz got eliminated. They were up by like 25. Guess who played in the first quarter and didn't play in the first half and didn't play in the second half? Mie Oni, who's a much better defensive player than Georges Niang. He can't shoot like Georges Niang, but he's a much better player, and we saw him playing in the Olympics, playing really well. Quinn Snyder's going to have to do some things different. He's going to have to play more defensive-minded lineups that may not be the most efficient three-point shooting teams. But guess what? If every player on the floor needs to be a 40+% three-point shooter for your offense to work, that's asking too much. And it's proved last year that even with all the shooting, it wasn't enough to beat the Clippers. You have to have players on the floor that can defend. And Miaoni is one of those guys. Rudy Gay now on the Jazz, one of those guys. The Jazz have Hassan Whiteside, backup center, can protect the rim. Royce O'Neal is going to need to have a big season. But the big thing is Quinn Snyder is going to have to adjust in the playoffs. He's going to have to do different things, try different lineups, put out different looks. If everything is just the same system and same stuff every single playoff series, the same thing is going to happen next year that happened this year. If the Jazz go into the playoffs and they're facing a team like the Clippers, who, by the way, are going to be really good, the Denver Nuggets are going to get better because they're going to get Jamal Murray back. I wouldn't be surprised if for the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard is back by the end of the season. Maybe. It's going to be a tough road and it's going to be a close window for them. But Kawhi might be back by the end of the year. Maybe. But there's going to be good teams. And guess what? The MO is out. If you spread that floor, you can get Rudy Gobert out of the paint. And the Utah Jazz defenders on the perimeter, if they're playing the ones that Quinn Snyder was playing, are not good enough to keep people out of the paint. So Quinn Snyder is going to have to play more defensive players. If you have lineups with Miaoni and Royce O'Neal and Rudy Gobert, that's good enough defensively. Now, everyone on the comments is going to mention that, well, Mike Conley was injured last season. Yeah. But you know what? Kawhi Leonard was injured last season. Jamal Murray was injured last season. That's part of the deal. So what it's going to take for Utah is some luck. That's part of what getting to the finals is too. The Milwaukee Bucks had some of the least injuries. Same with the Phoenix Suns. You know, they just did. You're going to have a little bit of luck and be a little healthy. And Mike Conley is going to have to rest. And the Jazz have to figure out something. Maybe they can go X Factor with Mike Conley and get him some adamantium hamstrings or something to keep him healthy. But somehow they're going to have to keep him healthy, you know, because they re-signed him and they're banking a lot on Mike Conley being healthy and him playing defense in the playoffs. I mean, I would argue that you should have Mike Conley not being your most important perimeter defender, and that's going to get him injured. And that's what happened against Memphis, is the Jazz were relying on Mike Conley's defense a lot, Quinn, and you need to play Miaoni more. Make Miaoni get those fouls. Put Miaoni on those guys because he can do it. And if you put him out there, it's going to keep Mike Conley healthy. There's just going to have to be some roster adjustments and things that go on that keep him healthy. You cannot rely, and especially in a 1-8 series, that should not have happened. And then guess what? It led to the Jazz losing to the Clippers. I'm already angry. Anyways, guys, that's all I've got to say. Let's give a shout out to our All-Stars. All right, guys, let's hear it for Kelsey Hamer, the Hammer, Anton and One Warren, Ezekiel Rice Seabay, my man from down under, JT Buckets Wardell, Austin R. Grant, editor extraordinaire, Eric C. The C stands for champion, Donald Schooley, schooling all of us, DW to CB, Darren Williams to Carlos Boozer, Jorge Arrizaga, mi amigo de abajo, Lee Christensen, dry him in the lane, Ryan Perry, the legend, Justin Ty H, Patrick Akubo, the connoisseur, Robert Hall of Fame, and DW, Jazz going all the way. Guys, that's all I've got to say. I think the Jazz end the season as the number 1 seed again. That's where I think they end up. That's where I think they'll be. And I think if Quinn Snyder is willing to adjust and come out with kind of different looks for this team and kind of break up that strict system and actually put out some different looks and formations that the Jazz can get comfortable doing, it will help them in the long run and can win them some playoff games. And I think they can get over the hump. Now, if they can, I think that they make the finals this year, but I think the Brooklyn Nets are just too good for everyone. If the Brooklyn Nets are healthy, I think they win. Guys, that's all I've got to say. Make sure, again, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel. You can also join the channel for the live streams that we do, post games and things like that. Make sure you join so you can be a part of it, guys. And also it supports the channel. I really appreciate everyone. Again, HoopsNerd20, go use it at manscaped.com. It helps me out a ton. Let's get through this offseason, guys. I'll talk to you next time.